it away, fellas.
Thank you, voice girl, and welcome to another bonus episode of the Manspace podcast. Now, this is the voice of Russ, and we are continuing the Russ and Company series because throughout the month of December, we're dropping bonus episodes to you, the Manspace Nation, as I interview some special individuals all across the country. And today is no different. So, men of the Manspace Nation, when is the last time that you actually went and got a checkup? We're not talking about your car now. We're talking about your health. Ladies of the Manspace Nation, when is the last time you encouraged your man to go get a checkup? Now, fellas, I got something really important to ask you. When is the last time you asked your doctor about what your PSA levels are? Well, today we're going to talk about that in this episode because I have a special guest. He is a globally recognized urologist, educator, and researcher with more than 40 years at Johns Hopkins University. Some people are history. This man has made history. From pioneering nerve-sparing techniques to preserve the quality of life to groundbreaking research with nitric oxide that helped pave the way for treatments such as Viagra. He has changed the world's view of men's sexual health. He has published over 500 scientific articles, has multiple books that he's authored, and served at the highest levels of urology leadership. And today he continues to mentor physicians and expand care globally. Manspace Nation, please welcome my guest, Dr. Authur Burnett. Thank you for being a part of the show today, sir.
Yes, well, Russ, and wonderful to join you, and I appreciate your very kind words. It's just a delight to be part of the program with you today.
Thank you. Right off the bat, I know that you were a military veteran.
That's true.
Thank you for your service, first and foremost. But how did you get into urology as a specialist?
Sure. So, I guess you're talking about kind of the origins of who I am, I guess. And, telling a history, giving people a little background, I think is very useful to do. Back when I was finishing high school, I realized in my family, our means were not any more extraordinary than the common middle-class family. And I know my parents had done so much to get me through my middle school years and high school years. And I just felt I needed to take a little more ownership for myself. So I joined the military to finance going to Princeton as an Army ROTC cadet. And that's how I got started at finance going to college. I was then able to go to medical school and get a deferment. Ended up in the reserves for about 10 years. But then along the way, then I was able to move into from being a military infantry-like man to a true physician. And that was my dream. And I stayed with it, worked hard and got through school. And then found that my calling was to be a surgeon, and subspecialty of surgery is urology. And I was very purposeful in selecting that subspecialty area, in part because I realized that there was great impact I potentially could offer in the field as a Black man, because prostate cancer, it was something I've been recognized back in my college and medical school years, has disproportionately affected Black men. And I just realized that I could perhaps play a bigger role and given talents to go to medical school and become a physician and surgeon. Urologic, the field was something that made sense to me.
So in your studies, have you been able to link anything to be why there's such a disproportionate number of Black men that are affected with prostate issues compared to our other counterparts?
Yes. Well, that question comes up quite a bit, and I think it's something to, help us understand why that's so. In terms of the curiosity of it all. Yeah, just to mention it, prostate cancer does affect Black men at about a 1 in 6 rate, about
Mhm.
1 in 9 in the general population. So just to give you some statistics and simple figures to think about.
Right.
But you asked, why does it occur? And it may well be a number of factors. There may be genetics that have a role,
Mhm.
but it may also have to do with healthcare access, environment, lifestyle, maybe dietary factors, exposures to various occupational hazards, and so forth. So there may be a variety of issues. Hazards, I mean, by various chemical factors, pesticides, various kinds of
Right.
manufacturing jobs that Black men may disproportionately have that others don't.
Mm.
And so there may be a host of factors that all contribute, but certainly access is a big one too,
Mhm.
where unfortunately we realize that Black men and those who are perhaps under-resourced have lesser means, don't always have the best access to medical care.
Wow. I think about I think it was about 4 years ago, I had, went home and visited, a friend of mine, and, we grew up together. We're probably about 2 weeks apart in age, and it had been some years since I had seen him, and we were sitting down talking, and he told me that, probably a year prior that he had been diagnosed with stage 4 prostate cancer, and it just shocked me because, we were, I think a lot of times we have a misconception that prostate cancer happens after age 50. You don't even get checked till you're, over 50. And, we're in our 40s and dealing with this. And it's like, wait a minute. It scared me to my core that I ran straight to my doctor and I'm like, hey, I need to get my PSA levels checked. And he's like, you're too young. I'm like, no, check them. You know, I think that there is a basic misunderstanding out there as far as that goes, where we don't know enough information about this. Um, can you expand on the PSA levels and what are proper PSA levels, and when should people, especially Black men, be looking to get these checked?
Absolutely. Glad to discuss this very important point. And certainly you lived through a life experience that showed you just how important it is
Mhm.
to get a PSA test. The PSA test, just for the audience, stands for prostate specific antigen.
Mhm.
Antigen, a fancy kind of medical term there, but the PSA test is a blood test that can be drawn just with a simple blood draw and
Mhm.
submitted to the laboratory, and it refers directly to the health of the prostate. There's a normal range, and if the PSA blood value test level comes back as being elevated, we have to be concerned that something is not right with the prostate. So it's not a specific marker for prostate cancer. Rather, it just refers that something's not right with the prostate, either prostate
Mm.
cancer or the prostate can have an infection in it called prostatitis. Some men have elevated
Okay.
PSAs because they just have a bigger prostate, maybe genetically, and therefore their
Mhm.
PSA levels are higher. But if it does get above the normal range, we need to think about, is there a risk here for prostate cancer, and for
Right.
diagnostic tests such as prostate biopsy. Now, your question was, when should people start to think about getting it done? And you're right. Prostate cancer can affect men in their 40s. And I've even
Mhm.
seen men in their 30s with it, regrettably. It's very
Wow.
rare, that age range. So it is commonly thought of as a disease state, a cancer that
Mhm.
disproportionately, or really just in terms of prevalence, affects the men of older age ranges. But I can tell you,
Mhm.
there may be something to this about Black men having higher rates of prostate cancer, maybe earlier ages of getting prostate cancer. And
Right.
so to keep it simple for the audience, I recommend that any Black man in particular, and if you have a family history indeed as well,
Right.
where it goes from 1 in 6 to 1 in 4, if you had brothers or a father with prostate cancer, that you should get at least a screening PSA at age 40. Just
Mm.
ask your practitioner, your primary care doctor, and
Yeah.
just say, I need to get a PSA. Why? Because yes, you don't have to be symptomatic about prostate cancer, and
Right.
and why we all feel kind of invincible at age 40 I think it's the right thing to do to take responsibility for your health. Get a PSA. And if it looks like it's kind of in the low normal range, well, fine. May not need to even repeat it for another 5 years. But
Right.
while guidelines from various societies have said age 50 and above, and even the government now had put forward through the U.S. Preventative Services Task Force a PSA range for men of 55 years to 70 years, which was a
Wow.
bunch of us urologists think that's just inappropriate. There are men who
Hmm.
are younger and maybe men who are older that we need to
Right.
continue to say, okay, get your screening PSA and at least get it done in your age of 40, just to at least check what it is. And if strong family history, definitely do that. And if it looks pretty much in the normal range, well, maybe you can hold off for a few years and repeat it. But once you get to age
Hmm.
50 or so, getting it annually just to make sure that you're keeping track of it with your regular wellness checkups, that's when the
Hmm.
prostate cancer risk seems to be higher. And between
Right.
the 50 and maybe 70, getting it yearly. But as long as any man has a lifespan that's at least 10 years, and this is on the older age range, I tell guys, despite where the government may say, oh, you're age 70, don't worry about a PSA. Well, if a man tells me I'm in great health, my parents lived to 90, I would say, hey,
Right.
man, keep getting your PSA
Yeah.
every year until you think that your lifespan may be 10 years or less. Why do I say that? Because
Hmm.
prostate cancer does move somewhat slowly, and it's not as threatening in terms of a rapidly
Mm.
progressing cancer like some others, a brain tumor or pancreatic cancer or
Right.
lung cancer. So we know that when men get older, it may progress more slowly, and that they're going to have competing health illnesses, and their longevity is somewhat less. Then we feel that the chasing prostate cancer at that time probably is not indicated. So I know I had a lot to say there, but I know these are the
Yeah.
kind
No.
of questions that come up, and I just wanted to make sure that to communicate to the audience that the real truth here, and to be aware of doing the right thing.
Wow. That was a lot. Um, what symptoms should men be on the lookout for that may be triggering that something might be wrong with the prostate?
Well, that's a good point, and I did make the remark that prostate cancer is not always signaled by having symptoms. That is
Hmm.
absolutely true. Okay. If you're waiting for a symptom to occur, okay, something to do with the urinary system or something that's affecting your sexual function, saying, okay, that may mean something's going on with prostate cancer. That's just not true.
Right.
The truth is generally these kinds of symptoms, urinary symptoms or sexual dysfunction symptoms, have nothing to do with prostate cancer. They may have something to do
Mm.
with just, getting, somewhat older, maybe with lower urinary tract symptoms,
Right.
maybe is going on with a urinary tract infection, creating burning or frequency or urgency and
Hmm.
urinary difficulties. All these kind of things may have to do with prostate issues, typically in a benign way, okay,
Right.
or a bladder dysfunction in a benign
Hmm.
way, most commonly. So if you're having symptoms, please get seen, but
Yeah.
don't think that these symptoms have to be a signal to get tested or think they have anything to do with prostate cancer. And similarly, sexual dysfunctions also are not really related to prostate cancer, except
Mm.
yes, men who've been treated in the pelvic area for various
Hmm.
conditions, including prostate cancer, that can adversely affect your sexual function. We can certainly get into that a little
Right.
bit more, and that's when
Yeah.
there may be some relationship to prostate cancer. But again, uh, in the absence of any prior pelvic treatment, surgery, radiation, or any other kind of trauma to the pelvis, these symptoms alone do not signal prostate cancer.
Mm. Interesting. Um, I know for me, I was diagnosed as pre-diabetic probably about 3, 4 years ago, and so they had put me on metformin.
Hmm.
And when I was on metformin, it had me where I could not go more than an hour, hour and a half without going to the bathroom. And initially, I thought that I was having something wrong with my prostate because I was having to go to the bathroom so often. Like I couldn't make it through a night without getting up 2, 3 times. And turns out that it was the medicine that was actually impacting me and having me go to the bathroom so often. So like that's a great point that it's not always a symptom. I mean, there could be something else that's completely going on. I know I was nervous and scared, and it was the medicine that got me. But you mentioned with the sexual function and your work with nitric oxide.
Yeah.
Now, that's something that I started taking when I started working out as a workout fuel to help put more oxygen into the bloodstream. to give that extra pump. But there are the other benefits of nitric oxide that works within to the sexual function. Now, how did you stumble across that? As far as I guess stumble is probably a bad choice of words, but but how did
It
you
was
get
purposeful.
into researching nitric oxide as something to help with blood flow?
Sure, sure, sure. Well, it's an,
Yeah.
it's a very interesting story. And just before I get into that, I just wanted to remark to Russ that I think it's I admire you and appreciate you just being honest with your audience that any man can have as symptoms, and just being honest and straight with with well, anybody, your trusted
Mhm.
family member, let's say, or partner, but even yourself. You're communicating to the audience that you had some symptoms here, and I think that's admirable that you said, okay, I've got health issues. I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to do the right thing about it. So let me just remark on my observation with that.
Thank
Um,
you.
but to mention the other aspect here about nitric oxide, back when I was training in the 1980s
Mhm.
in surgery, and then becoming a urologic surgeon, I was just appalled, really just completely disturbed that we just did not help our men better. Back as urologist, I was told in my training, I was told, well, if a guy comes in and he's unable to get erections, just try an herbal supplement like him being,
Mhm.
and tell him to go talk to a psychotherapist or something, or a mental
Right.
counselor, and otherwise plan to take his loved one out on long walks around the lake or something. And I was like,
Mhm.
that's just not cool. We
Right.
got to understand erection disorders better than that and help our guys out. And frankly, back in that era of time, I was very much, along with some others now, keen about trying to understand the science of erections. That blood
Mhm.
flow in the penile area reflects blood flow everywhere in the body. And in fact, an erection really is a blood flow phenomenon. And so the health of blood vessels everywhere correlates with penile tissue. And, we talk about coronary artery disease or peripheral vascular disease or cerebral vascular disease for strokes. Well, there's such a thing as penile vascular disease. Let's just be
Mhm.
blunt about it and not shy away
Right.
from using some real terms. But back then I was really concerned about how we understood blood flow and blood flow phenomena that have to do with what we understood erections are all about. And in the world of science, there was increasing studies on blood vessel function, how the lining within blood vessels called the endothelium functioned. There was some work in sickle cell research, which I was very keen
Mhm.
about. Even though I don't have that health issue and stay relatively healthy, I was just keen that men with sickle cell disease have a lot of erection disorders. In fact,
Mhm.
prolonged erections that are disordered. And we started to kind of put together the science, and I started to realize there may be a storyline there that had to do with not just general blood vessel function, but in the penile area, and got involved with the research, and then communicated with and interacted with some neuroscientists at Johns Hopkins. We realized
Mhm.
nitric oxide is a chemical that's made in the lining of blood vessels, but also from nerve tissue, believe it or not. And it works
Mhm.
as a kind of a neurotransmitter to regulate blood flow effects. And erections involve both nitric oxide release from nerve endings and blood vessels, the lining of blood vessels in the penile tissue. And that was the science of erections. And with that, we actually then provided the foundation for Viagra and some of these other oral erectile dysfunction medications, because
Mhm.
the science was that we learned that the mechanism now involved is very smart and scientifically principled process. And that this other drug that was being studied initially for heart issues kind of backed into the men who were in trials saying, I think I'm getting better
Right.
erections. And that was the storyline, but it kind of really was built on the foundation that we had figured out the science. And I published some major articles back in the early 1990s
Yeah.
that provided that foundation. So it was a very deliberate study, very purposeful, and I wanted to help bring forward the field. And
Mhm.
kind of the rest is history, I guess. With that, I've kind of built that. But in addition to being a surgeon, I've been a scientist. I've run a research laboratory for about 30
Mm.
years, and really contributed mightily in so many things to help
Yeah.
with male sexual dysfunction. But that's the nitric oxide story, kind of in a basic way.
Nitric oxide is something that's in so many different products out there. You can buy this over the counter. You can go to your local GNC, your vitamin shops, even in some of your grocery stores. You can find some version of nitric oxide. But is it safe to say that not all nitric oxide products on the market are created equally?
Well, that's good
And
to say. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
And with that, is there some sort of key like ingredient or something that people should be looking for when trying to choose a product?
Sure, sure. Well, a couple things to be said. First, that you're right. A lot of supplements are made available out there. You don't know the quality of some of these. And
Yeah.
point of fact, scientifically, it remains to be fully demonstrated how these products really can drive the nitric oxide mechanisms as well as just our natural functions when we're staying healthy. And being healthy means and we can get into that discussion, but just briefly, getting the right level of fitness, right diet,
Yeah.
sleep hygiene, and restfulness, and even just good mindfulness, and just being in a good state of mind. All these are probably the most significant elements that I would tell your listeners to try and follow. But certainly, based on the science of finding nitric oxide, many companies have put out their products, and some of them are questionable. Some we don't know whether they really drive nitric oxide directly. We're not sure exactly whether it truly can direct the blood vessel function as much as it's hypothesized. So the answer is it's really unclear. It's unclear, and I don't want to
Mhm.
sound vague, but I just have to say that is the truth. And I hope that companies are not trying to take advantage of individuals out there, and people are perhaps being exploited with very costly things to do. The most important
Right.
thing I would encourage all your audience to hear is please maintain your best health always. That's
Mhm.
probably much more important than the supplements in general. If you're not healthy, and then you sit in front of the TV all day eating McDonald's Big Macs, and then say, "Let me pop a
Right.
nitric oxide pill." That's just not the way to go.
But, so with that, and talking about the healthy diet and working out and things like that. Now, I have read and seen stuff online that certain foods help boost nitric oxide, especially like green leafy vegetables and things like that. Is there any truth to that?
Yeah, so that's and then that in fact kind of leads into kind of what I was referring to, that
Mhm.
I think that the balanced diet, the fruits and vegetables, we know
Mhm.
that even some of the kind of beets and products that have kind of the red coloring naturally carry
Yeah, yeah.
agents like resveratrol and others that are very much kind of nitric oxide drivers and things of that sort.
Mm,
But these sort of dietary things, along with just good fitness and regular
yeah.
exercise, probably have the greatest benefit on our
Mhm.
blood vessel function in the body, and in the penile blood vessel area as well.
Wow. Um, I want to go back to prostate cancer just for a moment and the impact of prostate surgery on sexual function. So if they have an enlarged prostate to where it has to be removed,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
there is a direct correlation, correct, to continuing to have normal erections, correct?
Sure, sure. So treatments, you're saying, or just having a bigger prostate, what's the relationship there, and how do we
Yes.
kind of reconcile all of that? And that's a lot within the question. So let me see if I can
Mhm.
unpackage it a little bit. Know that we talk, first of all, talk about having enlarged prostates as men have more urinary symptoms, particularly as they get older. It may be something that's a phenomenon of aging, because women have some voiding
Mhm.
issues as they get older too. And it may
Mhm.
not always just be directly related to the size of the prostate. It may have to do with just how
Yeah.
much the prostate may be tightening in a way that's
Mhm.
obstructing urine coming out of the bladder area, because the prostate's at the base of the bladder and encircles the urinary channel called the urethra. So the
Mhm.
size may be of interest, but we've learned over the years now that the size may not directly correlate with urinary symptoms. And it certainly does always correlate with erectile disorders or sexual function problems. So again, these may be unrelated matters, although certainly as men get older and start to have urinary issues, they may have sometimes some sexual dysfunction. And there may be common issues that lead to both, such
Right.
as having some diabetes, having some cardiovascular changes
Mhm.
that affect both the penile area as well as the pelvic area and the blood vessels involving the bladder and some of the pelvic areas that have to do with voiding. So I don't want to get too complex scientifically, but there may be kind of a relationship where it's true, but unrelated kind of way of saying it, that both are occurring, but they're just occurring simultaneously, but not one's causing the other, that sort of thing. But know that the treatments for these kinds of conditions may have an impact. And prostate cancer, again, as I mentioned earlier, does not mean that there's definitely anything necessarily going to happen with the prostate in terms of urinary symptoms. It's unrelated. So a man can have prostate cancer and never have urinary symptoms. A man can have urinary symptoms and not have prostate cancer, but it can, and it may just be two things happening in terms of the same time. So we have to dissect that apart as urologic surgeons when men come to our clinic and try to understand, what's the urinary symptoms, how we're addressing that, prostate cancer, how we're addressing that. And while they're not necessarily connected, we address both those issues. Now, treatments for these things, and I guess that's your next question here, for both the urinary symptoms, and there's treatments from medications to surgeries for voiding problems, but there's also interventions for prostate cancer, and they can also impact sexual function for either of those benign or malignant conditions now.
Yeah. One of my, my friend that I mentioned, he was saying after he had to have his prostate surgery, as he did have stage 4 cancer, he cannot get a natural erection on his own. And he said he's tried Viagra, Cialis, and all that stuff. He said he could eat it like candy and it would not work for him.
Sure.
To the point where he had to get shots into the base of his penis just to get an erection.
Sure.
And
yeah,
and the reason I mention this is because I want this to be a warning for the men out there to take it serious and go out there and get your levels checked, and don't wait to the last minute, because there's no real Superman on this planet. So, and none of us are it. So we gotta take care of our health, and you only get one life to live. So take care of your health while you have it.
Yeah, you make some great points there, that we all think we're invincible sometimes, and nothing's going to happen to me, and whatever happens, I'll deal with it when it happens. And then if you're too late with these diagnoses, we have to bring on various treatments that may actually then lead to greater dysfunctions. So stage 4 prostate cancer, for example, he likely was on various hormone blockers, may have had some radiation in the pelvis. All of these treatments will impact your function. Now, if you're diagnosed early, oftentimes we can administer treatments that are a little less damaging, a little less toxic. For example, you mentioned nerve sparing early in the program. As surgeons, we go about prostate cancer surgeries in the pelvis, and if it's an early diagnosis, more than likely we can carry out the surgery where we can preserve a lot of the surrounding tissues of outside the prostate, including the nerve tissue that regulate erections. If it's diagnosed late, we got to take all the tissue out the pelvis, and that man's not going to get natural erections, or we have to go through more significant radiation, perhaps, that can also then damage a lot of the nerve tissue surrounding the prostate that runs to the base of the penis and again regulates erections. So if it's a late diagnosis, we have to be more aggressive in our treatments, and it's going to have a lot more significant adverse impact. And that's where, if you go about more significant interventions, responding to these pills is far less likely. Other treatments are far less likely. And then in terms of treatment, some men may have to move on to vacuum pumps or learning how to do penile injections, where you inject medications that create an erection into the penis. So these interventions have to be a little bit more extreme, if you will, if we make later diagnoses. So all the more reason, get diagnosed early, get your PSA, get tested, get worked up. If it's early, we make the right decision. And some men now, and I just want to offer this one remark, Russ. While prostate cancer is common, a lot of it many times can be monitored. We use this term active surveillance, because we know some may progress so slowly that we prefer men really think about that. So I just want to make a brief plug to make sure guys know that, we're not here going to be aggressively bringing everybody through surgery or radiation. But those in whom we think have a more aggressive form of prostate cancer based on biopsy findings and the pathology doctors communicating, what the tissue sampling looks like. Some of those guys we know have much more aggressive forms of prostate cancer, and we have to put the pedal to the metal with some of those guys.
Wow. Now, this show was created on the basis of talking about the things that men don't like to talk about, bringing light and bringing those things to issue. Now, there are millions of men out there that face erectile dysfunction, but there's very few that actually talk about it. In your opinion and expertise, why do you think so many men keep silent about this?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I've been counseling men for a few decades now, and certainly have had a perspective that this is a subject area that's difficult to talk about. It's a bit of a taboo subject. There may be a sense that if you're impaired, you're stigmatized by that. You're not a man. Something's wrong with you. Blah blah blah. So you can see all of these complexities kind of come into discussion there. And at least those are some of the I think some of the aspects that lead to this, that men just don't want to accept that maybe they're functional or bring it out as a subject matter. But of course they come see me, and fortunately they may be just behind the door, they want to talk to a medical professional like myself, and obviously I'm very true to my gentlemen. When they come to see me, I want to do what I can to get them functional and where they want to be. But we should be talking more openly so that men realize that they don't need to just live with the difficulty. They don't need to have their sense of who they are in a manhood and so forth diminished by not being functional. We can try to be helpful to these men and bring them forward to regain their sense of their maleness and how they want to function.
Do you think, and I hate to bring race into this, but do you think that, especially as Black men, that we should go to Black male doctors who may understand us a little bit differently than going to somebody else?
Well, you make an excellent point. That cultural sensitivity, I think, is very important. Do I think that somebody has to completely align with somebody of a certain race or ethnicity? Sometimes that is advantageous for conversations, for understanding that person's background, how they think, what their life experiences are that may more closely align. But at the same time, I don't want to stereotype and say that's exclusive.
Right.
But many times that can be helpful. And do I think that it makes a good argument that we should have more Black physicians out there? To your young audience, stay in school, do like me if you can. And then, of course, figure out what your talent are. And there's so many other things to do in life professionally. But if you think that you have some aspirations to become a physician, stay in school. We need more Black doctors. I'm going to tell you right now, Russ, that among all the urologists in the country, only 2% are Black.
Wow.
So I've been kind of on a campaign for years with a lot of mentees and a lot of efforts to try and have students shadow me, come talk to me. I had a student with me in the clinic all day yesterday. I want to try and inspire young people and try to tell them that you too can become a physician. You can be any professional you want to be.
Yeah.
But certainly, yes, it's a road to get to be a physician. But we need you. We need you there to help us, the Black population. We need you.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. So you made history as the first Black professor of urology at Johns Hopkins. Now,
Yeah, that is true. Yeah.
What kind of challenges did you face in going into this field? Because I'm sure it wasn't easy being the first. It's never easy being the first. The second is always the guy like, hey, this smooth sailing for me. But the first guy, it's a little rough. So what kind of challenges did you face?
Oh, yes. Well, I can tell you, I faced challenges. But let me just say, I mean, any one of us who are pioneers in our respective disciplines are going to face that. I think that the unfortunate truth in our world is that there's kind of the unfortunate thinking that Black folks cannot really be the best and have the best intellect and mind and discipline, ability to achieve and be great performers. And that's just not true. We just have to be
Right.
given some opportunities. And yes, and when I came through the Hopkins Medical School, I was one of 6 black students in my class of 110. Going into residency, I was one of the first few that really got into residency at Johns Hopkins, who was black, and I stayed on him and ascended all the way up to a full professorship level. And some of the battles I had to fight were, various kinds of setbacks and doubts from others about who I was. I would often have patients say, "Well, where'd you train? What background do you have?" And I'm sure they weren't asking the others about that sort of thing, but of course I had to continue to behave at the highest level, show them I was
Yeah.
knowledgeable, take care of them. But you do have these challenges throughout training and early in a profession where people just uncommonly see somebody who they don't otherwise associate with what would be a Johns Hopkins full professor.
Yeah.
But you persevere. You persevere, and you've got purpose, and that you're on your game, and that kind of tells the story.
You've done mission work throughout Africa and the Caribbean, and it has been incredibly impactful. But what kind of men's health challenges do you see globally that most of us are have a blind eye to or not aware of that doesn't get reported out there?
Yes, yes. Well, it's unfortunate that there are many um, places in the world that are neglected, many places in the world that are
Mhm.
under resourced. I took on a real purpose, particularly in the Caribbean in the past 25, 30 years, where I knew this, here we are right in the same, region of the world that we had,
Right.
the United States, go to the North, Canada is still doing pretty well in terms of their health care and their citizens' general health and well-being. But just got, a quick hour flight to the South, we're having
Mhm.
urology that was being practiced that was probably a generation back in terms of what are being the kind of available treatments that should be brought to patients. And I just took on a mission there that with I travel down there probably 4 or 5 times a year. I'm over the holidays, much to my wife's dissatisfaction. I'm going to take a few days to run down to the Caribbean and do some surgeries where they really need some expertise and
Yeah.
some experience with that. But I also train residents in the area. I spent a lot of time at the University of West Indies, which is in Kingston, Jamaica, which is really a center for training urologists throughout the Caribbean region. And been doing that for 25, 30 years. And we've seen urology services and treatments really improve within that region, which has been a delight for me to see that as I work on training other urologists, young urologists, and then they go out to various islands and various locations and provide the best care to people in that region. And I also, you're right, I travel elsewhere, all over the world, but also spend a lot of time in Africa and various places with humanitarian missions and providing service. And the impact, I think, has been one where I realize I handle some of the more complex surgeries being there because they're not prepared to do that. But even basic urology training, I try to bring forward
Yeah.
just so we can help provide better services.
Wow. Now, I neglected to mention mission works in your introduction, but for the Manspace Nation, could you explain what Euro Mission Works is?
Sure. So Euro Missions Works, is the name of the nonprofit LLC that I started, gosh, quite a while ago now.
Hmm.
That describes the nonprofit that I started, and I traveled many times with some of the other physicians at times. But it is a nonprofit here that speaks to the humanitarian mission in urology that I particularly want to bring to locations in the world that I think reflect the Black race and particularly in the Caribbean. So that's what it is. It's just it's a humanitarian organization, nonprofit, and fortunately, I have had some donors help with that. I finance it a great deal myself, But others know that my purpose, and by donating, they certainly take advantage of tax advantages sometimes. But
Yeah.
know that this is know that this is kind of the vehicle by which I've been able to do a lot of humanitarian work over the years.
Yeah. What is the future for Euro Mission Works look like, and how can people go out to be able to support your mission?
Well, certainly if they want to support us, we're revamping my website. So, you're probably going to see that reemerge here within the next 2 or 3 weeks, because really I'm reactively restarting. We had to pull it down just to get some things corrected with it a little bit.
Hmm.
But certainly if people want to know more about it, you'll be able to find that. If you want to know more about me, I have fortunately some presence in social media sites, even through Johns Hopkins, and information can be identified through that, by which you can learn more, and certainly support us if you wish.
Okay.
And now, the last word.
So, if you could rewrite the way men are educated about their bodies, where would you start?
Well, I would start with a man recognizing that it doesn't begin with your penis. There's been a lot of locker room talk about the little head and the big head, but there's something to be
Right.
said about that. I mean, the reality
Mm.
is that the manhood begins with the good character and self responsibility, and being true to yourself, being authentic, being true to your partner and your family, and having really a purposeful role in your community and in society. And I think that means maintaining your best health, having the right attitude about life, and then your good sexual function will be part of it. But think in a more general way about what you're trying to do. And I know this sounds pretty heavy to say. All of us were put on this planet, hopefully with a person who's got some true humanity and really a purpose in life. And every one of us, it has got a great purpose, I think.
Mhm.
And so understand your purpose, but maleness to me is being a good man, by way of character and self responsibility.
Yeah. Wow. This has been very impactful. I know that you have a lot going on, and we definitely would like to be able to have the information once your website is back up to be able to link it from ours and encourage people to come out and support what you're doing, because it's important. It's very well needed, and I have such admiration for you and your work and learning more and more about you. And I encourage the Manspace Nation to go out there and just learn about everything that you've done and are doing right now. So thank you so much, and I appreciate you really spending the time with the Manspace Nation. Uh, One last word I'll give you is, what's something that you want men to take away from this interview, your works, and even from your books that you have published out there?
Yeah, well, maybe selfishly, in a way, we have a new book coming out probably within the year, on
Mhm.
maleness and purposeful manhood. Certainly,
Mm.
it speaks to the medical science and good health, but also speaks to just my perspective on being a good man in our world. So to look for that, it's going to be called Penis Confidential, I think is the title we're
Mm.
putting out right now. So it'll draw attention, but while it guys, they draw that attention, it's still going to really be, a consultation with the physician, somebody like
Mm.
myself who's got the real background to speak truthfully and credibly about what's going on.
Mhm.
But again, I think the word is similar to what I said before, which was, let's be good men, guys. Let's be good men.
Yeah, yeah. And I know you mentioned that you're working on your website and trying to get that relaunched right now, but how can people find you on socials?
Just look my name up. Just look my name up. It's right there, on any kind of platform you can find it. It should be right there.
All right. Perfect. So much. Thank you so much. I appreciate you spending time with us. We definitely want to reconnect. Manspace Nation, I'm going to link from our website, a link to his website. Once we have that information and it's back up and running, we'll have that information because we definitely want to be able to support Euromission Works. Manspace Nation, this has been great. We're running out of time in this episode, but we'll be back with another episode very, very soon. And until then, we are out of here.
Thank you, Russ.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Manspace.
Whichever platform you listen to us on, make sure you subscribe and don't miss a show.
Remember to keep up with all the Manspace updates on our website, themanspacepodcast.com.
And you can follow us on Instagram at ManspaceNat1.
Until next time, Manspace Nation, he's Les, I am Russ, and we are out
Out of here.